There are hundreds of instruments out there, and all of them make different sounds. Some play very low, like bassoons, tubas, or double basses. Others play very high, like piccolos, glockenspiels, or violins. Many sit right in the middle, and still others can hit both ends of the extremes and every note in the middle. Yet all of these musical instruments read music off of the same 5 lines and 4 spaces that we call a staff. With so many notes to play, how do we fit all of them on a single staff? While there are a few different answers to this question, and they all work together to make modern music notation what it is, the one we're going to be focusing on today is the clef. Ironically, the word clef is the old spelling for the French word for key, but clefs do not tell you what key the music is in. Instead, they function as a sort of origin to show you which line or which space corresponds to a specific pitch. Let's start off with the treble clef. It's the most iconic clef in music. If you know anything about music, if you've played music, you've probably seen the treble clef because a good majority of music is written in this clef. Now, treble clef isn't the real name of this clef. In fact, if you remove the staff from the clef, it's actually called a G-clef. And that's because the swirly bit in the middle is supposed to show you where the pitch G4 is located on the staff. You can see the swirly bit actually looks like a capital letter G, and that's where it originated from. People would actually just write on the staff, this is where G is, and that's how you would know which pitches are on which lines or which spaces on the staff. This notation evolved to the notation that we have today with the iconic treble clef, but it still serves the same function. Wherever that swirly part is, that line or that space is G4. In the modern treble clef, that G4 is the second line from the bottom. However, if you keep that exact same staff, you remove the treble clef, and you put on a bass clef, the second line from the bottom is no longer a G4. In fact, it's almost 2 octaves lower than that at a B2. Why is that? Well, the bass clef isn't actually called a bass clef, it's called the F clef, and the 2 dots on the right side will show you where the pitch F3 is located on the staff. When those 2 dots are centered around the second line from the top of the staff, we call that the bass clef. F3 is more than an octave lower than G4, so we use the bass clef to notate low parts, and we use the treble clef to notate higher parts. In fact, you've probably seen both clefs used simultaneously in piano music, where the bass clef on the bottom shows you what to do with your left hand, the lower side of the piano, and the treble clef on top tells you what to do with your right hand, the higher side of the piano. But are there more clefs than just the G clef and the F clef? Well, you may have seen this clef before. Now, you may know it as the alto clef or the tenor clef, but once again, if you remove the staff, this is actually called the C clef. And that divot right in the middle tells you where C4 is located, otherwise known as middle C. Because this clef is centered on C4, which we have chosen as middle C, the center of all of our pitch in this modern era, this clef is used to notate parts that are intermediate as far as their pitch is concerned. You'll see it used for alto, tenor, and even some baritone parts. In fact, that C clef stuck right in the middle of a staff is commonly referred to as the alto clef. But you can take that C clef, you can move it up 1 line, and that is now known as the tenor clef. Actually, you can move the C clef to any line, and it has a specific name: soprano clef, mezzo-soprano clef, alto clef, tenor clef, and baritone clef. You notice that we're using the same clef, the C clef, for all of these arrangements, but we adjust the position slightly so that the staff is more focused on whichever part of the voice we want to focus on. If you move C4 all the way to the bottom line on the staff, that means that everything above C4 will be notated on the staff. If you move C4 to the top line of the staff, that means that it will notate everything below C4. So just by moving the clef to different places on the staff, we can center our staff on a particular range that we want to write for. So it's important to recognize that when you see these clefs, they're not actually giving you the arrangement of notes on a staff, but they're showing you the location of a specific pitch. Now, there are other clefs that aren't really a part of this discussion, but I quickly want to touch on 2 of them. There's the neutral clef, which kind of looks like a box, and it's actually there for unpitched instruments. Frequently used for unpitched percussion, the lines and the spaces on the staff still tell you which thing to play. For example, with drums, it'll tell you whether to use the snare or whether to use the crash cymbal. but they don't actually specify pitches. For that reason, the neutral clef is not really a part of this discussion. It doesn't focus on any pitch because it's used for unpitched instruments. The second unnatural clef I want to talk about is tabs. Now, tabs are a way to notate for guitar, and once again, it doesn't use the same scheme as the other clefs. In fact, tabs are not even used on a staff. It may look like a staff at first, but you'll notice there are 6 lines instead of 5. The staff for tabs is actually just a top-down view of the strings of a guitar. You have 6 strings on the guitar, you have 6 lines on that staff. Tabs will give you numbers instead of notes, and it tells you which fret you need to be playing on that string on the guitar, so it does notate pitch, but not in the same way that clefs on a staff do. But returning to our conversation about clefs, just like I said, the clefs will show you the location of a specific pitch. The C-clef shows you where C4 is, the F-clef where F3 is, and the G-clef where G4 is. In fact, it's probably more appropriate to refer to these clefs using their letter name instead of the names treble, bass, or alto, and instead say this is the G-clef in the treble position, or the F-clef in the bass position. This is because all clefs, not just the C-clef, can be moved around to change where that pitch is on the staff. If you move that treble clef, G-clef, down 1 line, it's no longer a treble clef, but it's the French violin clef. If you take your F-clef and you move it down 1 line, it becomes the baritone clef, and in fact, it's the same as using a C-clef to notate the baritone clef. If you take that F-clef in the bass position and move it up 1 line, then you get the sub-bass clef. And this isn't the only way that you can alter the arrangement of the pitches on a staff. You may have seen a treble clef that has a number 8 below it. What that indicates is that this treble clef is actually sounding 1 octave below what a normal treble clef would be sounding at. Tenors in choirs frequently read this treble clef instead of the bass clef because they hit a lot of those higher notes that would be way off of the staff in the bass clef. While you can do the same thing without notating the clef any differently with an ottava, you can just slap the ottava onto the clef and then you don't have to notate an ottava for the whole piece. Now, instead of putting that 8 below the treble clef, you could put the 8 above. In this case, it's an ottava alta, meaning 1 octave above, instead of an ottava bassa, meaning 1 octave below. Or you could switch out that 8 for a 15. This makes it a quindicesima alta or a quindicesima bassa, depending on if it's above or below the clef, meaning 2 octaves above or below. You could put this on an F clef as well. There really aren't that many limits to what you could do with clefs to notate your pitches, but there are standard practices. What those standard practices have boiled down to in our day and age is that we use the treble clef for a lot of high-sounding instruments, we use the bass clef for the low-sounding instruments, and we occasionally use the C-clef in between for some intermediate voicings. What's important to remember is that these clefs show you the location of certain pitches on a staff, and as long as you know which clef shows you which pitch, you can always be able to figure out what pitches you're supposed to be playing when you're playing with that specific clef on a staff. In the end, the treble and the bass clefs are going to be the most important and the most widely used clefs that you're going to encounter when you're reading or writing music. But I hope this video has helped you better understand clefs, what they are, how to use them, and that you are more prepared next time you encounter a strange clef. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Otherwise, have a great day, and thanks for watching.